Welcome to the weekly current affairs class. Today's topic will be dealt from the society and ethics. Our first topic that we will be dealing is with the Forest Right Acts. You must have seen the article in the newspaper that came 2 to 3 days back with respect to the Forest Right Acts. We will be discussing the historical background of symbiotic relationship with the tribals of the forests, how there was an injustice of the tribals that went from Britishers to the post-independence period. Then what are the features of the Forest Right 2000 Act, 2006 Act, then what is the way forward and the issues that are associated with them, and our next topic will deal with the climate action and what are the ethical issues basically that are involved with respect to the climate change. These are the two topics that we will be dealing with. First topic again over here is Forest Right Acts. I will be providing you with the historical background. See, tribals have always shared a symbiotic relationship with the forests since time immemorials, because these people have lived in the tribal areas that basically constitute the forest areas. They have shared the symbiotic relationship. We have even, for example, you must be aware of the environmental protection with respect to the sacred groves that we have. How many sacred groves are there in the Maharashtra is there, Madhya Pradesh is there, and how the tribal people basically worship them and they contribute towards the environmental protection, how they use their traditional knowledge to conserve and sustain the forests. That is how there is a symbiotic relationship between the tribals and as well as the forests. But things have not always been rosy, as this symbiotic relationship was first interrupted by the Britishers, who wanted to basically economically monetize the forests, and for that what they did was deprived the tribals of their rights on the forest through various acts and the policies, and these acts and policies were also continued in the post-independence area. See, injustice to the tribal, here we will first seeing is the first that major act or the blow that came to the, or that stopped the relationship, symbiotic relationship between the tribals and the forest is the Indian Forest Act. It provided that the state jurisdiction over the forests were classified under the as a property of the states, and it stated that extraction of forest produce will be done for profit. The basic tribal activities such as grazing is there, or tree felling is there, or hunting activities are there, they were totally prohibited by this act. So, for the livelihood of the tribals were disrupted due to this act. Then in the post-independence era, the major act that we have was the Forest Conservation Act. It was also, the basic purpose was for the conservation of forests, but however, it did not recognize the symbiotic relationship of the tribals with the forests, or how the traditional knowledge of the tribals can be used for the sustainable conservation of the forests. So that is why it barred converting forest land for non-forest purposes, including traditional agricultural practices of the tribals. It did not give special consideration to the needs of the tribals. Then we have another act that is in place is the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. It created protected networks for the protection of conservation of biodiversity. We have national parks, we have wildlife sanctuaries, you must be aware of that. But what happened in the act was, it not only restricted activities like grazing, agriculture, but pushed tribal settlements out of the core forest areas. It also totally deprived the dependency of the tribals on the forests, because they, for their basic livelihood purpose, for their agriculture, for their cultural practices, tribals were dependent upon the forests, and even till date it is very true with respect to these things, or because this is a way of life. So this is how the injustice to the tribals were done in nutshell. We have a major act in the pre-independence period, that is the Indian Forest Act 1927, which governed the forest under the state jurisdiction and prohibited tree felling, grazing and hunting activities. Then in chronology we have Wildlife Protection Forest Act, which created proper networked areas for the conservation of biodiversity and excluded the tribals from the core protected areas. And then we have the Forest Conservation Act, which also prohibited traditional agriculture forest practices that were done by the tribals. So that is how basically the relationship of the tribals with the forests were broken. Okay, moving forward, see, recognizing rights. What happened was, after a period of time in 2006, government enacted Forest Right 2000 Act. It gave to the demand of the citizens as well as the tribals that the symbiotic relationship of the tribals with the forests should be recognized. How the individuals, basically their traditional knowledge, that can be enhanced or cultivated to conserve the forests. Okay, how basically they have land rights, their rights with respect to minor forest produce are there, everything that is there, it was recognized, and the symbiotic relationship again was recognized by the central government. And in this context, Forest Right Act 2006 was enacted. What are the major features of this act? First of all, it provided for the intended beneficiaries. It stated that forest dwelling scheduled tribes and other forest dwelling tribes that have been residing in forests for generations, their rights will be recognized. Basically, who will be covered under this under this act? They will be the forest dwelling scheduled tribes, means though the tribes that are dependent upon the forest for their living, and other well as other forest tribe traditional dwellers, forest dwellers, they who have been residing in the forest for a significant period of time, their rights under this act will be recognized. It provide for the four major acts or the four major rights for the tribals, and we will see what are that. First of all, it is the land rights. It stated that basically forest dwelling scheduled tribes, they will have the right to ownership of the land in the forest area up to the maximum of the 4 hectares. Ownership will be only for the land that is cultivated, and no new land grants will be granted as such. Basically, what it was done was that land they have been cultivating for 3 or 4 generations, okay, their right over the tribals over that land will be recognized, number 1. Second, usage rights, another major right that was recognized, because I have already told you that tribals are dependent upon the forest for their living. So their right to extract minor forest produce, okay, grazing areas, pastoralist routes, it was recognized. For minor forest produce, obviously, for if you are reading the newspaper, you will be well aware of the scheme that has government has started with respect to the minor forest produce, Vandan Yojana, that is there. Next one is the another major important right is the conservation right. See, act provides for the rights and power of conservation and protection of the community forest. It basically provided that the traditional knowledge of the tribals will be used to conserve the forests. And another major right that was recognized was tribe relief and developmental rights. In case of rehabilitation or in case of illegal eviction or the forced displacement is there, they will be provided with the proper rehabilitation and resettlement rights. Proper amenities will be created for them so that they can be peacefully relocated. So I will again go for the 4 major rights that have been recognized. First of all is the land rights. It is subject to maximum of 4 hectares, but over the land which they have been cultivating for 3 or over 4 generations. First one. Second one is with respect to the usage rights, with respect to the minor forest produce or the grazing areas that are in use of the tribals, this has been recognized. Next one, conservation rights with respect to the traditional knowledge that will be used or that will be cultivated for the protection and the sustainable use of the forests. And last one is the relief and developmental rights, that in case of illegal eviction or the forced displacement that may be due to dam or due to some another activity, proper basic amenities will be provided to them and proper arrangements will be made for the relief and settlement. These are the major features of the act that were recognized. Now coming forward to what are the issues with respect to the Forest Right Act, we see that even despite the implementation of the act, okay, so much progress has been made with respect to all the that 4 rights that we have seen. You will notice that in the historical backgrounds, all the 3 major acts that we have covered, the basic rights were denied to them. So it was a very historical move to recognize these 4 rights and recognize the rights of tribals over the forests. But still we see that tribal people still face issues with respect to their settlement rights are there, or with respect to their claims over lands are there. Why it is so? What are the issues that are basically creating hurdles in the implementation of the Forest Right Acts? First one is that the high rates, there is a high rate of rejection of the claims made by the Gram Sabha. You must be well aware that in the Forest Right Act, if there has to be the land alienation, okay, the resolution should be approved by the Gram Sabha. Okay, so what is happening is the Gram Sabha, which has been making claims to the lands in the forest areas, their claims are not being accepted. There is a high rate of rejection in the claims. First one. Second one is the lack of awareness. First, on the part of the tribals, because of the poor literacy rates, they do not have awareness that what are the rights that have been granted to them under the Forest Right Act, or proper communication from the government side has also not been there with respect to providing the awareness regarding the rights. First one. Then there is a bureaucracy misinterpretation of the FRA. They use this as an instrument to regularize encroachment instead of the welfare measures of the tribals, because they know that tribals are illiterate, they do not know about their rights. So there is no recognition of the rights that has been made under the Forest Rights Act. Next one, lack of technical know-how. Basically the Gram Sabhas who are in charge of approving the resolutions for, as well as making the resolutions for the land right claims or for the land alienation, okay, they do not have that technical expertise regarding what is in their interest and what is not in their interest. Regarding, for example, we have highlighted here for conducting a scientific survey of their individual community land claims, okay, for like geo tagging is there, all that new technologies that are in their place with which you can see that what claims to the land you have. They do not have technical know how to use their technology, or they are not aware about that technology. That is an issue. Next one is the reluctance of the forest bureaucracy, another big point. Okay, see, the forest bureaucracy, obviously they have enormous amount of the discretionary powers that they are using. Because of the recognition of the rights under the Forest Right Act, this discretionary power has been curbed to a significant extent. So the forest bureaucracy also fears that the enormous power over land and people that it currently enjoys, basically they will fear the corporates may lose the cheap access to the valuable natural resources. So this is another major hurdle in the implementation of the act. Because of the illiteracy and lack of awareness, the power distance between the bureaucracy and the tribal people, it is lot, and that is why the discretionary powers that are used in the hands of the forest bureaucracy, they fear losing that. Further, the corporates that are there, they also fear that because of the recognition of the rights, they will lose the cheap access to the valuable natural resources, because obviously we know that the valuable natural resources are located in the forest areas. That is the another issue. Last one is the avoiding Gram Sabhas. The forest right committees that is there, that is made under this act, it has the 2/3 participation of the Gram Sabha. It is mandatory that over 2/3 members of this committee should be from the Gram Sabha. It is mostly constituted by the Panchayat Secretary without the presence of the Gram Sabha members. So the major feature of the act to constitute the committee and with the presence of Gram Sabha members, it is not also upheld. The members from the Gram Sabha are not included these forest right committees. So when the members are not included, the representation is not there. Obviously, the issues or the resolutions that will be taken up, that will not be in the interests of the tribal people. So these are the issues at large that we are dealing in this slide here. First one, again I will repeat in the nutshell. First one is the rejection of claims made by the Rajya Sabha. then there is a lack of awareness on the parts of tribals, and as well as bureaucracy misinterpreting the FRA Act. Next one is the lack of technical know-how of the Gram Sabha. Next one again is the with respect to the constitution of the Forest Right Committee, and last one is the reluctance of the bureaucracy to curb their discretionary powers over the tribal people. Moving forward, another major issue is the poor integration with the market for minor forest produce. The minor forest produce that they are collecting from the market. Even I have told you that government has launched a specific scheme with respect to that, that is a Vandan scheme. But again, there is integration with market is not there. They are not getting the required price for this produce. That is the issue. And the another major issue is the uneconomic land holdings, as a lower extent of land is awarded than claimed. For example, somebody is demanding the 4 hectares of land. This claim is not recognized. They are given 1.5 to 2 hectares of land, and the land that is given to them is not cultivable. It is an uneconomic land holding, due to which they are further pushed into the poverty. I hope we are clear with the issues as well as the features here. Now we will move forward to the basically our next topic, that is there climate action and ethics. Okay, so what is this issue has again been in news for significant amount of time. You can use this topic basically in the ethics also. Climate change is an important topic. It is an important topic from the view of environment as well as geography also. But here that we are dealing with is the linkage of the climate action and ethics. But before that we move on to that, we need to first know about what is the environmental ethics. See, it is a branch of applied philosophy. You must be aware of the applied ethics. You must have studied that. It is a branch of applied philosophy that studies the moral and ethical relationship of the human beings to the environment. In basic terms, if we want to say, is that it is the relation how man is related to the environment. Obviously, environment is giving us so much benefits in terms of natural resources, tourism spots and all that are there. But in return, what is a man's or human's moral and ethical obligation towards the environment? So this is what an environmental ethics is. It defines about the man or human being the relationship to the environment, and in turn the human's moral and ethical obligations towards the environment, that is called as environmental ethics. So why it is important, climate action? Why climate action is so much important? See, what is happening in today's world or the global society is unmindful development and ignorance towards environment. If you want to link it with the economics also, because of the sole focus on the economic growth, this is an also criticism of our approach on the GDP measures only, because we are not including gross environmental product is there. So many approaches are there. Our sole focus on the economic growth and ignorance of the environment, what has it tend to be is, it has started climate change, leading to global warming and inconsistencies in natural phenomena. What are in natural consistency phenomena? You must have witnessed that recently, last month examples, these are their latest, prolonged heat waves in the northern Indian region, or the devastating floods that occurred with landslides in the Assam region. These are the severe outcomes of the climate change. If you want to include a global example also, there was basically in China last year, in a particular region of China, there was a month's annual rainfall that we get, average rainfall that we get in a month, basically it poured down in single day, causing to the flash flood problem in that particular city. So that is how there is an inconsistency in the natural phenomena. Monsoon is sometimes early, monsoon is sometimes late, prolonged heat waves are going on, landslides are occurring everywhere. This is all nothing but the consequences of climate change or our insensitivity towards the environment. Obviously, we can look into the causes. What are the causes of climate change? What are the reasons behind these phenomena, but what we are here trying to do is trying to link it with the ethics. What are the ethical issues that are involved with respect to the climate change or climate action? See, first one is the basically environmental protection versus the mode of development. We think we have already discussed it, that as we are not following the sustainable mode of development, our sole focus of all the countries or the majority of the countries in the world has been upon the economic growth, sole economic growth, leading to the unnatural use of the resources, okay, or disturbance in the sensitive areas such as hills is there. You must have seen basically last year there was the problem with respect to the floods in Kerala because of the problems in the Western Ghats, that region that was there. Okay, so what kind of mode of development are we following? Is it mode our sustainable development, or it is excluding all other forms of social arena and it is solely focusing upon the economic growth with irrespective of our regard to the environmental considerations? So what is it? This is the first ethical issue. Next one, current actions versus the burden on future generations. See, whatever that is done to the environment, it is being contributed by the current generation. We are contributing to the carbon emissions. We are unjudicially using our natural resources, but the future generations, those who have not even been born yet or those who are basically of tender age, they have no role to play in this kind of development. They don't approve of this development, okay, but the burden or the consequences of this change will have to be borne by the future generations who are not even born yet. This is another ethical issue. Next, usage of resources by the rich versus the poor. Basic example that I will try to give you is, for example, ACs are there, okay, they contribute to the warming of the temperatures, but most of them are used by the rich or the upper middle class. Poor people from the poor class basically, or the lower class, they do not unjudicially use the resources. They are not contributing that to the environmental pollution, whereas they are the one or the primary disadvantaged section with respect to the climate change. For example, you can take the example of Odisha. Cyclones are there. Every time the cyclone occurs in that area, basically majority of the what we say consequences have to be borne by the poor people. Or in example, if there are floods in Mumbai due to the heavy downpour rainfall, what happens is the individuals, those who have resources, basically they are able to save themselves, but the individuals who do not have the resources, who are living in the slum areas, okay, they are the first one to bear the brunt of that floods, and also sometimes lost all their belongings that they have. So the major usage of the resources is done by the rich versus the poor. Then I have already explained you how there is a disproportionality in the consequences that is faced by the rich or the poor. For example, take the example of heat wave. It is mostly the people who are working in informal sector or on the agricultural lands that will have to bear the brunt of the heat waves. Those who are the majority of the people working in the formal offices, formal organizations, those who are sitting inside their AC comfort offices, they won't have to bear that much impact of the heat waves. Then again, responsibility of developed versus developing nations. This has been also the talking point of the India, that we are country, for example, US is there, we are contributing 1/8 of the US emissions, okay, but the majority of the things or the carbon emissions with respect to industrialization that have been committed by or emitted by, they are done by the developed nations, and now the brunt has to be borne by the developing nations. And you are asking the developing nations who have much more priorities. We have to look after the poor, we have to look after our food security, we have to give employment to the people. So many considerations or priorities with respect to social development of the government are there, but developed countries are not recognizing that. They are asking the developing countries to contribute equally, while they have not contributed or emitted the carbon emissions in the past. So this becomes another contentious issue. And next, last one of is the animal rights, because they are also sharing this planet Earth with us. Okay, they are also the members of this planet, and when the heat waves type of things occur or the floods occur, basically animals, they lost their lives. Okay, they are sometimes trapped in the floods. They have to bear the they are even not contributing to the climate change. Okay, but they have to bear the consequences of this climate change or the global warming that is going on, or the flooding of the island nations is going on. So there is a ethical issue of the animal rights as well. So what are the ethical issues that are faced? I will again repeat in the nutshell. First one is the protection of the environment versus the mode of the development that we are following. Next one is the current actions versus the burden on future generations. Next one is the usage of the resources by the rich versus the poor, and disproportionality in consequences faced by the rich and the poor, responsibility of developed versus developing nations, and last one is the animal rights. Now, how should we solve these ethical issues? What is the mechanism to solve this conundrum? First one is the common but differentiated responsibility, that the developed countries should recognize that we have a more responsibility to basically stop the global warming. We have a more responsibility to contribute to the financial resources, to share the technical know-how. This point can be well extended to the rich versus poor debate also, that rich who are more using the resources, okay, they have a more responsibility to curb the global warming also. Okay, or they should help the poor to bear the, so that they can bear the consequences of this climate change. Next one, with respect to development, obviously we should follow the sustainable model development. There is no doubt about it. We should give consideration to the environmental factors. Next one, SDGs are there. Already there is a well defined policy regulation that how we can contribute to the effective policy making to stop the climate change. We should incorporate those. Next one, special development initiatives for those who are vulnerable and disadvantaged, in the, that can be in the form of infrastructure, that can be in the form of economic incentivization, anything. Okay, next one, using traditional knowledge to solve the crisis. Okay, for example, you must have heard of the Andaman tribals that are there, how they tackle, how they use their traditional knowledge to combat the floods that happen in the Andamans. That type of thing can be done. Then whatever institutional framework that we have, like we have National Green Tribunal is there, National Biodiversity Authority is there, we have specific laws like Environmental Protection Act is there, Environmental Impact Assessment is there. All the loopholes should be covered, so that this framework, institutional and as well as policy framework, should be strengthened. And last one, that international collaboration, for example Paris climate deal is there or Glasgow summit was there. Countries should collaborate and try to find out a common solution, okay, so that everybody wins in the last, or the citizens or the common people are beneficial at the end. These type of things can be done to solve the ethical issues. I will repeat it again in nutshell: common but differentiated responsibility, sustainable development, then incorporating SDGs in the policy making, special initiatives for the vulnerable and disadvantaged, using the traditional knowledge, then strengthening our policy as well as institutional framework, and international collaboration in the form of Paris climate deal is there or Glasgow summit was there. These type of things can be done with respect to this. So this is all with respect to our two topics that is there. Okay, now I will provide you with the question with respect to the seize the mains that you have to write. Okay, you have to write it in the 150 words here. What are the salient features of the Forest Right Act 2006? You have to answer it in 150 words, and obviously you can submit your answer at rajisacademy.com. Okay, that will be all from my side. Thank you and all the best for your future endeavors.